Hello vinyl community, welcome back. This is a video I wasn't planning to make. I'm not that happy to be doing it, but I feel it needs to be done. I'm going to share with you a record I just picked up very recently, and I was going to show it in one of my kind of typical recent finds videos, but I'm going to do it as it's a standalone video of its own for reasons I'll get to in a moment. This record is a reissue through Light in the Attic Records. Now I've had it on CD for some time. If I can find the CD. It is Wayne McGhie and the Sounds of Joy, self-titled LP, originally released in 1970 in Canada, one of the earliest soul records released in Canada. Originally came on the Birchmount label. This edition's on orange vinyl. This is a second pressing of this album through Light in the Attic. The first reissue came out in 2004. This is a 10th anniversary reissue from 2014. Came out for Record Store Day, hence the blurb. I'd had it on CD for quite a while. The fellow who reissued this through Light in the Attic, Kevin Howes, is a friend of mine. I got that CD direct from him, but this is one I never had on vinyl until very recently. Finally went online and picked it up because it was a limited edition that never really showed up in stores. This was, as I said, one of the earliest soul R&B albums that came out in Canada, but it was made by musicians from the Jamaican Canadian community in Toronto, many of whom, some of whom had solid reputations as musicians there, but were unknown here, and carved out a living playing gigs to the local West Indian community, playing around here and there, mainly in funk, R&B, soul kind of style. That was what local urban audiences wanted to hear. There was no real interest in this music nationally at that point by black artists in Canada. And Wayne McGhie himself was from Montego Bay in Jamaica. He was a guitarist, singer, songwriter, arranger. He'd done a little recording in Jamaica before immigrating to Canada in 1967 with many of his compatriots. That was something of a center for West Indian immigration at that time. By 1970, when this LP came out, there were reportedly 45,000 people of West Indian descent in Toronto. The first Caribbean Festival was held in 1967 in the city. But as far as this LP, something of a loose group of players that was later dubbed the Sounds of Joy, but all very stalwart session players, fluent in reggae, fluent in soul, R&B, funk. You had Alton Ellis, one of the great rocksteady singers of Jamaica, on tambourine and guitar. That's him peeking out at dead center there. You also had Lloyd Delprat on organ, who had played for Studio One in Jamaica. Everton Paul on drums, and just several other players. All came together in these sessions organized by Wayne McGhie. Most of the tracks are originals on here. There's covers of Nana, Hey Hey, Kiss 'Em Goodbye. When I Think of Home is an original. Take a Letter, Maria. What else? Cover of the Friends of Distinction's Going in Circles, and By the Time I Get to Phoenix. I think everybody had a stab at that song. But what happened was this LP was released, came out on the Birchmount label in 1970, got no promotion, of course. Wayne McGhie organized an official group called the Sounds of Joy to promote the LP. But of course, with no promotion, it sank without a trace. And months later, most of the remaining copies of the LP were destroyed in a fire, in a warehouse fire, ensuring its future rarity. Wayne McGhie, meanwhile, kept on gigging on the scene, was in various groups like JoJo and the Fugitives. After the Sounds of Joy fell apart, he formed a group called Ram, and played with various other people like the great keyboardist Jackie Mathieu. However, by the 1980s, McGhie fell prey to mental illness, specifically schizophrenia. He became estranged from all his old friends and disappeared from the scene, lost touch with everyone, until finally copies of the original Sounds of Joy LP began to be circulated in Sample Hunter, Beat Digger, breakbeat circles in the 1990s, fetching increasingly high prices, until finally Light in the Attic Records decided to do a reissue, and enlisted my friend Kevin to help track down Wayne McGhie, which they finally did in 2003, and managed to secure this authorized reissue, which, as of this issue, is on its second pressing. So I'm going to play you a couple of tracks from the LP. Like I said, this is mainly soul, R&B, funk, milieu. There's a little bit of reggae on here. There's one original instrumental on here by McGhie called Dirty Funk. I'm going to give you a taste of right now. So you see very soulful sounds. Sounds a bit like Alton Ellis there to me. This is Dirty Funk. This is not New Orleans, this is Toronto. Second side, there's one song with a little touch of reggae, kind of that choppy early reggae sound. This is a tune called Cool It. If you want to be happy, cool it. Now, as I've said, I just picked up this LP recently, posted it on Instagram, and about 2 days later, my friend Kevin posted the news that Wayne McGhie had passed away. Now, for these guys gigging in the Jamaican Canadian scene at this time, there was no fame and fortune. They were very fortunate to cut a record for one of the smaller labels, but barely known in their own countries, but they were making history at the time. And their story was completely unknown until specifically this reissue came out. This actually kicked off a series of reissues that Light in the Attic put out in the early 2000s called the Jamaica to Toronto series. Another release is Jamaica to Toronto, Soul, Funk and Reggae, 1967 to 74, compiled by Cipriano. That's my friend Kevin. The original box they used for this photo is in his place. I've seen it. Here's the CD version. Comes with a booklet detailing the history of all these guys. And all this was completely unknown until Light in the Attic began putting these out and putting these guys' stories out there. There's Jackie Matu right there. Lloyd Delprat is on the Wayne McGhie album. Johnny Osborne. Here's Wayne McGhie himself. Bit of his story. As I've said, he'd fallen prey to mental illness in the 1980s. That and various health complications finally took his life just recently. But his music is back out there. It's known again, and his legacy is secure. So I'm going to leave you now with one song. First off, I want to note one thing my friend Kevin always says: his work in doing these reissues is time sensitive. That's kind of one of his expressions, because these guys are leaving us. Their stories are in danger of being lost forever. So appreciate them while we can. I'm going to leave you with one more song by Wayne McGhie. This is a follow-up, or a later release than the Sounds of Joy LP. This is a song with a group called Ram, and a tune called Love is the Answer. Peace, VC.